welcome to Clearing the Haze podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Marting, and today I have a nominee interview for the NDASA Executive Board, and that is Dean Klassy. Dean has been a prominent figure, I would like to say, within the drug and alcohol testing industry. I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'm going to have him give his introduction today, but this is a man that I have come to know and respect very much in this business, and we've had conversations, and I've even asked him questions, and so I've looked forward to this interview today. So, with that, Dean, could you do us a favor? And I can't imagine too many people that don't know who you are, but if you could just give us an introduction and what you're doing in the industry, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I'd want to thank you for the opportunity to make these presentations. I think it's very important for NDASA to have the option to do this. I think it's very important that what you do for the industry.
Well, thank you.
Well, I'm Dean Klassy. I've been in the industry for 35 plus years, I'll at least say.
Wow.
I think it's closer to 36, but that's okay. One of the things is on the story of how I got started has been interesting, and I've told it to some of the people that have been in my consortium classes. Is in 1989, I was doing scenic airplane rides as a commercial pilot. And at that time, 1989, the rules started coming out that you're going to have a drug test. And so I wanted to comply. I love flying. And I looked around for somebody to help me start that business of whatever, however I had to get drug tested.
Yeah.
Went to a couple of people, and they didn't want to deal with a one-man show. So that independent person. And they were going to charge me $1,000 for 1 year, no testing required. And it was like, nah, that doesn't sound right. Went home and told my wife, and I said, guess what we're going to get into? She goes, drug testing? What the heck is that? And so in 1989, we started our business and continued to fly at that time and did a little bit of everything at that. But at that time, because the gentlemen that were locally competitors, they only wanted the big guys. So I had a target market already set for me instead of, most businesses, well, where do I start? Where do I go? And so my start was already set to be small businesses. So we did the mom and pop. We did aviation initially for the first few years. Then we got into the transportation side of the house. And it was kind of interesting to see and grow with the industry from the very beginning. When the rules started in 1989, 1990, nobody knew what was going on. The feds didn't even know what was going on. And so that was a problem that being, quote, a pioneer in the industry, it was very hard to understand. But as we grew, the industry grew, we all understood more and more of what was supposed to happen. And if we didn't know what was supposed to happen, we made it up. And eventually it got into the regulations and that type of thing, which was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
From that point, 23 years after that, my wife wanted to be out of the business in 20 years. She was the owner of the company, 51% majority owner, played the game. And so she got more state bonus points for contracts than I did as a vet.
Mm.
And so my wife was the owner. And she always hated it when I reminded her of that. But anytime she was dealing with a pain in the butt client, like we all know we had, it was my business. She goes, your employer did this. And I was like, no, you're the majority owner of it. So we always had that type of thing. And we were a family business. My kids both worked for us as well. My mom and dad did collections for us. So true family business.
Wow.
As we expanded, we had more employees, but that was years later. So 23 years in the consortium management, collector, BAT training, and everything else. During that time, I was also a board of directors for DASA, or at the very beginning, NACS, National Association of Collection Sites, where we started. And I was the chairman of the board for 8 years.
Wow.
They changed the bylaws so that they could get me out, even though they kept voting me in. So then they put in a 2-year max option, so that was okay. And on our TPA, we did 100% or almost 100% DOT testing. My wife finally convinced us to get out of business in 23 years. I came down to Sandia National Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She wanted to move closer to her sister, which is in Arizona. So after 23 years, you kind of get in that rut of doing your business and you know what's going on. Coming here, it was very interesting because we were 95% HHS testing, which I did very, very, very little on my own business.
Yeah.
So I had built that excitement back up, learning a new industry, learning a new process, and kind of rejuvenated what I was doing in business, which I felt was really good. I'm designated employer rep here at the business. As I said, we do some DOT testing, not much. But I think it's very important that people understand, and I'll talk about it probably later, is that a lot of people do federal testing when we talk federal testing, but everybody talks federal testing, i.e. DOT testing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very, very small part of the industry.
Yeah.
So other than that, I've been very active in DASA, board of directors for many, many years, many of the activities. Worked through the merger of DASA and NDASA. Was a board member for that first year after that joining of the two forces, which was very good for the industry. Everybody had said that for many, many years. And it was just the right time and opportunity to be able to do that. Currently on a couple of the committees for NDASA, I was the chairman of the accreditation program, vice chair of the mentoring program. I'm an approved trainer and state affiliate for New Mexico. And I do have to say that I've had a lot of questions lately. If people follow me on Facebook and also on my LinkedIn account, I am retiring from Sandia Labs. And a lot of people have asked me, well, why are you retiring and running for a board seat? And I said, my big answer to that is always have been into the education, always been in the training of our membership and as the industry as a whole. And I said, now I have more opportunity to educate, train. I'm going to do consulting. I'm going to be doing audits on people, if they want. So I'm going to still be very active in the industry. I just am my own business now. So I think that's something that also gives me a little bit of a different mode of things, I might as well say. But I have had a lot of questions on that, is why it doesn't make sense if you're getting out of business. I'm not getting out of business.
Yeah, it sounds like you're getting back into business.
My own.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think as long as you've been in this business, as much as you have invested in your time and in the impact that you've had, I think it would be just kind of hard to just go cold turkey and just drop it and not want to be part of anything.
Yeah, it's like I don't know anything else.
Yeah,
So, I might as well give back. And that's always been something I love to do, is to, train the ones coming behind us.
yeah, I agree with you. Dean, the executive board, they are, we've had goals and aspirations that we've had since the beginning. And so one of the questions I want to ask you is what are your top priorities for NDASA, and how do you see NDASA evolving in the next 5 years?
I think one of the big things is, as you said, the membership has grown. I think the membership can grow a lot more. I think one of the big things there is the different stakeholders that we have. So again, we got the background screeners, we got, employers. We've got different vendors that we don't deal with. We don't deal much with trucking industries or aviation industries. I think we could grow tremendously, which would also then require us to expand our education and training platforms to get into helping those employers. Because again, we don't do a whole lot for employers. We do it for the industry and our services and the service agents. But I think it's important that we go ahead and look at those other people that use our services, because they need a lot of education. Designated employer representatives, we talk about it on town halls on a continuous basis. Part of the mentorship program. We've got a session coming up in the next couple months with DERs. We've always said that DER training should be mandatory, and it's not. So let's go ahead and be forthcoming with that. Let's get everybody understand what their roles and responsibilities are. Many times we all walk into a company that has a new designated employer representative we don't know about until we send them a letter and we get it bounced back that addressee unknown. And it's like, now you got to start all over again.
Huh.
And with the same thing, they have zero knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important that we get them to understand the importance of that position.
Yeah.
Continuing our education with all of our stakeholders, to include state, local government, federal government, is very important that they understand our thought processes. I can go back many, many years ago, and I remember Mary Bernstein, which was the head of the DOT Office of Drug Enforcement at that time. She was 5'2" maybe, but she was a fierce lady. And I was the chairman of the board at the time, and we were looking at some of the rewrites happening. And, it was like, we only hear the bad things for your industry. We never hear the good things. So tell me more about those good people, those good things that you guys do, because we only hear about the violations and people aren't doing their jobs and things like that. So I think making sure that we have that interaction with all the stakeholders is going to be important. Growing our membership, getting them active in the membership, I think is very important. And, it's important that everyone has a voice. Doesn't matter if you're the small guy or the corporate CEO. Our industry is really built on the mom and pop small companies, and they grow and they grow, and then they become the large TPAs and collection site services and that type of thing. But those small guys, when they're starting off, they need that help. And I've always said is, if I had the right resources that we have today, and NDASA, the training and everything else, I would be very surprised to see where I would be today with all the resources that are available today. Because we had to build our own projects. We had to understand and try to read the rules and regulations and say, hey, what does that mean? If we had an organization like NDASA that does a lot of that work, helps out and educate, I think I would have been a lot farther along than I am today.
You mentioned the town hall, and what a wonderful tool that is for all of us to be able to get together. You have MROs, you have SAPs, you have TPAs, you have all these individuals that are there, so that when people do have questions, like you were saying, you've got an audience right there that can be willing and able to answer. And I've even had some questions that people have asked that I'm like, well, you know what? I never thought about that, but I want to hear what the answer is. So it's been very educational.
And I think that sharing is so important, because again, we all have our own stories, and I've been in the industry for 35 years. I've thought I've heard almost everything. Nope. Seen everything? Nope. Yep. People told me many years ago I should have started writing a book of all the problems that we've seen. And I think that's the big thing, is that community, that sharing of the industry. Because again, we're all competitors, and I've said this for years and people don't agree with it. We're all competitors, but we have to work together for the end, for the drug testing program. I can't do collections in every city where my clients are. I can't do the training. I can't do this and that. I have to, and I depend on other people in this industry to help me help my clients comply with the regulations.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important, is that camaraderie, that sharing, and that type of thing.
Absolutely. I think we saw a big part of that come into play with COVID when you had a lot of people that could not get out, but they still had clients that needed to be taken care of. I know that happened with us. Both our offices were shut down because everybody was sick, but we had another company that we were able to ask if they would take care of clients if we send them in, and we would do that as well. And you're absolutely right. There's times when, you may have an emergency call out, and then one of your clients calls you with another
Right.
one, and you need to get them taken care of one way or another. So it's a good thing to be able to have those working relationships with others, or know who you can call and have some comfort that they're going to be able to do the process or the testing correctly in the way it should be.
And I think that's a big thing. Correctly, you build that relationship. And I had a hospital that we contracted with to do some of our testing when we weren't around for just that reason. People said, "Aren't you afraid they're going to steal your clients?" And I said, "No, I provide a very good service, and I know that I do better than they do. So they're not going to leave me. I think they're just going, I need that company's help to make sure my companies are in compliance."
Yep, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of industry challenges that we're seeing today. And what do you feel, in your opinion, are some of the biggest challenges that we're facing in the drug and alcohol screening industry today? And how do you plan to help NDASA as far as addressing those challenges?
Well, I think, I think everybody has said, marijuana is one of the bigger problems we have to deal with. How we're going to deal with the state and local laws, is it going to become federal? I think eventually it will be. But at that point, we still have to look at the testing, because again, ultimately, we're looking for safety. And, marijuana, even if it is legalized, like alcohol, we still test for alcohol under certain circumstances. So I think we still have to be able to understand that the safety aspect of the industry doesn't matter what impairment devices they use. And again, we'll all hear there's new things coming out all
Hmm.
the time. And, we still have to be looking at that safety side of it. So I think working with the industry, working with other partners in the industry, that we can move that forward as to getting everybody to understand the safety aspect of marijuana, the additional drugs, and that type of thing. I think go back to education, and my whole industry, or my whole life in this industry, has really been education wise. We have so many people that need to be educated. I'm very active in the social media side of the house. I look at so many of the social media posts that are totally inaccurate. Many years ago, I was arguing with on my LinkedIn account, a doctor, as to the unpolitically correct transgender issue. And we were discussing the idea, and I brought up the idea of what's the official sex of a person. And he was a physician that did the sex change operations. And I said,
Mm.
and he did drug testing. And so we were going back and forth, and he said, "No, you're wrong." And so again, it was a very lively discussion. We had other people coming into the discussion and on the life on LinkedIn. And I eventually wrote to Washington, D.C., of course, to only get the official determination or interpretation. You got to go to the top.
Mhm.
And I posted the letter I got back from Advocacy, and never heard a single thing from him again. So again, we have so many things that people have misinformation on. And doesn't matter where in the aspect of this industry you are, if you're in the industry or on the outlying side of things, employers need to understand, employees. I get tons of questions on CBD. I've got so many different slideshows and PowerPoints on CBD and that type of thing. And there's a difference between HHS and DOT and other federal agencies. So one of the other things I'd like to really see is NDASA expand into federal testing. Have, look at that HHS. I hire collectors sites around the country, around the world in my current position, and they all have to be HHS certified.
Hmm.
But there's nobody out there that certifies them.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
So, when I started here 13 years ago, I was very active in DASA. And finally, I got DASA to say, okay, let's start teaching federal testing. Let's start working on HHS testing. Because again, there's so many people that do it and they don't understand. A lot of people say, well, where did this rule come from? It actually comes out of HHS first before the modes get it.
Hmm.
And that's like right now with, hair testing or any of the other things. HHS has to say yes first. Then DOT comes out with their rulemaking. Then it goes down from there. So HHS is that parent organization that all drug testing flows out of. So I think understanding that, getting that word out, because as a DER, we have 18,500 people, and I can't find collection sites that are HHS approved or trained and qualified.
Wow. That is a
So
good valid point.
I think it's very important. And people say, well, federal testing is DOT testing.
No.
There's so many of the federal agencies that require drug testing that, again, will help our client or help our membership grow their businesses. Because if you're able to, where you in city of Albuquerque, if you can show that you do and you're trained and qualified to do HHS collections, guess who I'm going to use?
Hmm. Yeah.
Versus somebody that doesn't have that certificate that says HHS.
I was just thinking here at our Denver office, we've had two tests for HHS, and um, myself or my collectors probably would not have known that that's what it was supposed to be classified as if they hadn't come in with the paperwork with the instructions to make sure that we followed them, which is smart because, like you said, we don't, a lot of us don't actively do those testing. And so when you have that situation, it's going to be like, all right, who can I call and who do I talk to on this? So very interesting.
And
I
especially
think
when
that
it
is a good answer.
gets into problem collections. So
Yeah.
direct observed HHS versus a direct observed DOT.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Totally different. Yep.
And if you do it the wrong way, you're going to end up probably getting sued.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good valid point that you bring up, and I think that is something that we should look at as an organization to be able to provide that type of training and get that out to people because we don't want them to, unintentionally find themselves in a position where they could be sued like that. And had they just had this knowledge, they could have avoided that. And it's kind of like we've been talking for years about getting fentanyl on the panel, and now
Yeah.
they're finally going to do that, but it's taken years. So it's never a fast process on a lot of this stuff, but eventually it comes around.
Well, when is fentanyl going to be added to the DOT panel? That's a whole nother question
Yeah.
because in July it's approved for HHS.
Yeah.
Well, I called my lab the other day and I said, how am I going to order the new HHS panel with fentanyl? They said, we don't have one. And I said, this is July.
Yeah.
I said, you need to do something fairly quickly. And they said,
Yeah.
well, the only thing you can do is do your normal 5 panel plus add in the separate code for fentanyl and we'll test it. So that's a workaround, but that's not the way it should be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how those dominoes are set up and how they fall.
Yeah.
So, you know, advocacy, well, yeah, advocacy is probably the next thing that we have that is something that I've been very impressed with the NDASA organization. It's been playing a key role in helping us shaping policies related to drug and alcohol testing in the industry. We just got back from Washington, D.C. I wasn't able to go out this year. I did the year before, and it was just an incredible experience. But how would you work to strengthen our organization's influence when it comes to policy making and industry regulations?
I think making our voice heard. I think, I haven't been to either of the two meetings on the Hill. I have gone in the past with different organizations and stuff, and it's a huge plus
Mhm.
to have people walking around and introducing themselves and getting our word out as to what we want done. And, I remember seeing what was done last year and seeing what was done this year and hearing what's being done, the difference between last year and this year. Um, I wasn't able to go because I'm training my replacement. So I'm really hoping that next year, as a business owner, I'd be able to go and see it firsthand. And I think the big thing is getting people to understand how important that local connection is. And really, we can work on that at home in our local states and build that relationship and use it as a sounding board for when we do go to national side. We go to Washington, D.C. and talk to the legislatures as to what we want to see. And by starting off on the local side, we get to have that little flair of, hey, this is what we're doing in the state of whatever. And, you need to think about this, or we've got this new law or something else. And trying to get the word to them and educate them as to new things and understand that this year was a lot better than last. But I
Mhm.
think we also have to look at what's coming up in the future. We know
Yeah.
rescheduling is still going to be there. We know fentanyl is going to be there. We know there's going to be other drugs that are in that system. But I think continually talking to them, going there once a year is terrific. I think there needs to be a little bit more. And how does that look as to going and or a letter writing campaign or something that we can do mid-year just to keep our words to them and update them on new things and things like that. Trying to get people to go, it's an expense, for small businesses and that type of thing. It's an expense to go, but those people who are into the industry and really invested in the industry, I think once they go, they'll always go. I think you get that and say, wow, I'm actually able to talk to these people. They
Hmm.
actually listen to me. They ask questions of me. And now you become their expert.
Yeah.
And I think, listening to everybody on what happened this year at Advocacy Day, I think it was a huge difference. And now we're building that relationship. And I think NDASA needs to continue that. We need to get more people out there. Is there a way that we can help on funding or planning or a airline discount code? If we're sending 100 people to DC all in a short period of time, is there some airline that we can work with to help on that expense? We already have a hotel, but how else can we help our membership go to these places and, further our words to and our education?
Yeah, and a sponsorship of some kind. I do believe we have a couple of airlines that have their DERs that are part of NDASA. So we do have that ability to come in and sit down and say, hey, look, what would need to happen in order for us to be able to realize this for the membership? So that is a great idea. Um, innovations in technology, even during your time that you've been doing this, you've seen a lot of advancements and a lot of things that have come about, and they're still coming. Um, with that being said, how do you think NDASA can help its members stay ahead of that in the industry with all the changes and stuff that are coming?
I think we have to do two things. Is one, this is what is working and this is what really is the gold standard, but understand, and this is the second part is understand there's these new technologies that are out there. Don't poo-poo those type of things. We talk about breath drug testing. We talk about different types of drug testing innovations. But a lot of, I think the industry is kind of, well, we haven't done it that way.
Yeah.
It's new. Will it even work? We have to be open-minded to listen to what's out there. And will it work? Who knows? But if we don't try, we'll never know. If we don't have those, people that are starting off these businesses coming up with these ideas of, hey, this might help, you know, maybe one of us in the industry can say, hey, you know what, if you tweak this a little bit, it would
Yeah.
be really helpful for the industry. Because some of these companies that are putting things out or putting ideas out aren't in the basic, into the business itself. They're providing different technologies and that's their business. If they come to us and ask, they come to NDASA and say, hey, you know what? How would you guys react to this? And I can go back to when oral fluid was starting and when we were going through some of the initial trainings, the manufacturer was there and, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that makes a big difference in different things. And working together as an industry, I think we'll move these things a lot forward. Just the electronic chain of custody form is a huge improvement over what we had
Yeah.
years ago. But I also have a big problem is that just because the technology is here, we can't get rid of that paper.
Yeah.
I have collection sites that refuse to do paper.
Yeah. I don't understand that.
And it's like, come on, if your internet goes out, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Just close the doors. You're
For
wasting your
how
money.
long? For how long?
Yes.
Yeah. That could damage your business permanently.
Yeah. So I think being open-minded and I think partnering with some of these groups and at least saying, hey, it's out there on my LinkedIn account, anything that's drug and alcohol related, I post on my LinkedIn account.
Yeah.
And, it's set up to be educational. I don't really put in there um, people that are selling things or that type of thing. It's pretty much a educational tool that people can go to. And, for me, putting them all together, it's very interesting to see different things that are going around in this industry.
Well, and you bring up a good point because you do have a very active LinkedIn account with that. And I know when I first started clearing the haze and stuff, I asked if it was okay for me to post in there, just to make sure. And that was one of the things that you told me. You said, I encourage it, but just don't start selling stuff on there. And I was like, no, I'm just putting the podcast out. That's all I want to do is be able to reach people. So it's been great for me to be able to utilize those tools that you have in place. Um, but I think you bring up a very interesting point, Dean, because I think some of the technology that we have seen has come from people outside our industry who have seen us drug test and they've latched onto something and they're like, I can run with this.
Yep.
And they come up with a product, and then by the time they come to introduce us to it, we're going, well, you need this, 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 and this, and it's not in compliance with this and this, where if they would have been part of like NDASA or had that access, they wouldn't have to go all the way back to the drawing board to reinvent or redo what they came out with.
And a lot of times at that point, they put all their money into that first. They
Yep,
can't go back and rebuild.
yep,
And now they're out of business.
yep,
Even though it would have been a terrific idea, terrific improvement for our industry, but because of nobody asks us,
yeah.
I could go back to the legislature. Do they ask us?
No.
Sometimes they do on
Sometimes,
notice of proposed rulemakings, but who responds to them?
yeah,
That's a whole
exactly.
other issue.
You're exactly right. Exactly right. Um, teamwork within teamwork and leadership within NDASA, especially being on the board. There are a lot of really successful and influential people that are on that board. leaders in their own right, whether they're owning their own businesses or they've been in the industry and are very influential when it comes to understanding and knowing and being able to get things done. There's a lot of strong personalities in there. But one of the things that I've been amazed at is because we're all working towards a common goal, how well everyone works together because each individual has their own specialty or their own ability to bring things to the table. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, what qualities as a leader do you feel that you bring to the executive board? And can you share an example of a successful team initiative in the past that you've worked on?
I think the big thing is being open-minded. We all run our business. We operate a process, but just because we do it one way doesn't mean it's the right way. It doesn't mean it's the only way. There
Yeah.
are so many things that we do in this industry that can go 10 different ways to get the same end result. And none of them are wrong. There's not a problem with them. It's just how you do things. So I think being open-minded, listening to what other people have to say. As you said, we're all different. We all bring forward so many different aspects of the industry and different parts of leadership and that type of thing. So I think that's important to do that. Also thinking outside the box. And I think that's the thing is if we have a problem in the industry, there's enough people on the board that probably have seen the issue, if not seen the issue, may have done that what if situation. And I'm always one in business, in my personal life. What if I do this? What's going to happen? Or what if this happens? What can I do?
Hmm.
So I think asking those questions, I think, is very important. But willing to work together, willing to voice maybe the not correct or correct way of saying things, and being open and let your heart tell the story, because we all are so invested in the industry that it's one of those things that we are all very, very passionate about one way or the other. So I think that's important as a leader in the industry. And again, I bring in years of experience. People have said, well, what you did before. And I said, I don't care what I did before. You know, People told me I shouldn't teach my consortium management course because I told people how I ran my business. And I said, that's fine, because that forces me to be better. Every single person that comes to my class, I have to be better than what I just told them how to do it. So you have to be continually thinking about, what can I do next? What can I be doing in order to improve my services that I offer to whoever? So I think that's an important part. Um, a story, again, I have so many different types of times when my leadership ability has come through, not only through the drug testing industry. I belong to very many different organizations outside of the industry as well. But I think working on the rewrite of Part 40, working hand in hand with the stakeholders, and like I said, Mary Bernstein earlier, she was one of those persons that either you got along with or you didn't. And I was lucky enough to hit it off, and we had a good relationship during the time. And again, educating people, I think, is a real huge way of um, moving things forward. Leadership, it's educating.
Yeah.
I can always go back to, you're educating everybody in this industry.
Yeah. The growth that we've had happen within NDASA has been mind-boggling for me, having been one of the founders, to see where we're at this point. It's just incredible. And I think one of the things that's really set us apart is in our committees that we have, that we've really not put a cap on those committees. Some of them probably should, because there's so
Yeah.
many people in them. But I think that's really what's unique about NDASA, is that our encouraging members to be involved and allowing them to do that has been really cool to see. Um, what do you feel you can do to help enhance NDASA's engagement with its members? And not only that, but attract new members or even new organizations to come into NDASA.
Well, I touch on the committees first, and I think it's very important that we make people feel like they're welcome.
Hmm.
We kind of do, but one thing at the annual conference, we put in the past they put out signs saying, "Hey, if you're interested in this or this, come and put your name down, and we'll get a hold of you." Um, I think that works, but I think at sometimes throughout that time that we have with a lot of our members, not all, but explain to them what each of the committees do. As I said, I'm on the mentorship committee as the vice chair, and Chandra and I worked together very well on that. Mark was set everything up in motion for that. And we're there, but we can't get people to come. And even though we have people asking questions and they're saying, "Oh, I need help," but to get them to that membership activity is hard.
Yeah.
Accreditation. There's two of us, and the second person just joined. So I think we need to get people to understand what these different committees are. Yes, it takes a little bit of time. Most of them are one meeting a month, an additional hour,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit of extra work somewhere. But again, I think we have to really, if we want people to join the committees, we got to advertise the committees
Yeah.
more than just on the website, more than just a talk, but I think we have to do it on a regular basis. Um, you know, Heard people talk about DERs, and we've talked about it. We're adding it to the mentorship side of the house. We've talked about growing the mentorship to each of the service agents.
Yeah.
And same with the accreditation committee. I'd like to have somebody that's a DER to help me or help us qualify those DERs,
Yeah.
those
It's a good
substance abuse
idea.
professionals. I know a little bit about it, but how about if I get a SAP? How about if I get a DER or a couple of them? How about if I get some of these specialties? I'm very knowledgeable in the TPA side of the house,
Yeah.
so I can do those. But let's try to get and go out and ask. And I think that's another thing that, as a volunteer organization, there are a lot of people that want to be asked to help.
Yeah.
You can say, "Hey, I need help. Hey, can you help me do this?"
Yeah.
Different organizations I belong to, we've done that, and it's worked out very well. "Hey, I know you are the expert, or you are an expert in the SAP program or the DER program or the EAP. We need help doing this, or put together this project, or work on this talk." And I think if we go out and target people, yes, it's uncomfortable to do that, but it's
Hmm.
also uncomfortable to be asked about it. But in the long run, it's like, wow, they came to me and asked if I could help them.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And I think that's something that is very important too, as well as to get that growing membership. Like I said earlier today, I think one of those big things is getting out and seeing and being open-minded of different organizations, different types of membership we could have. If we want DERs, well, if we want just construction companies, you know, and each one of our members can help with that, help
Hmm.
that section grow, which means now they're going to be in regards to those people, say the contract company, the house builders or whatever. Now, if you're local to some of those people, you're going to be their expert in drug testing, just because now they find out that there's this industry out there that can help them do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So our members can grow their business, as well as NDASA can grow our membership.
Yeah. I agree. One of the things that I talked with Nick Hartman about was a lot of people don't understand some of the committees, what exactly they do.
Yep.
And one of my commitments was in having those individuals that are leading those committees, having them here on the podcast with a couple of them so that we can kind of have like a panel discussion as to what goes on with this and how we need members and what they can do and stuff like that. I think that's going to go a long way. The other thing we talked about was state affiliates, and I know that
Yep.
you're a state affiliate. What a powerful tool. If you could just get each state affiliate to go back to the advocacy day, wow, that would be huge. So we've got a lot of good things going, and you've got a lot of great ideas with that. So thank you for that, Dean. I really appreciate that. You know, you've been really generous with your time today, and I've only got a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. But one of the things I'd like you to do is if you could take a moment just to talk to the members and just let them know why you believe that you're the right candidate for this position right now, and what message would you like them to consider when they're looking to place their votes?
Well, it's been said many times on your podcast that, the people that are on the board or nominees that are looking to be on the board, there's a wide variety, and we're all very good at what we do, and we have different experiences and that type of thing. I think the big thing is that um, I'm open-minded. I've been in the industry for a long time, but I still continue to be very active in the industry. It's part of my life. Drug testing isn't just a business; it's a life issue for me,
Yeah.
and for a lot of people. And I think that's the big thing out there is, yes, I've been around for a while. I'm used to what was done in the past, but I'm very open-minded to coming up with the solutions that need to move us forward for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And I think that's a very important thing that is out there. And again, I really stress the education side of the house. And it doesn't matter if you're brand new, you've got to learn what you don't know, but also continuing education for us that have been around for a while.
Mhm.
So I've been in the industry 35 years. I just went and took my CSAPA test and passed.
Wow, good for you. Congratulations.
And so continuing education, we're always going to have to learn.
Yeah.
And, it's been on my list of things to do. And people, in the office here, they said, well, you're going to retire. Why do you need it? That's for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I do it? Was I able to do it? Yes, I was. And, I've had a lot of people ask me since then, is it a hard thing to do? It's not one of the easiest tests you take.
Huh.
But again, at the end of it, you say, wow, I was able to do it.
Yeah. Well, and
So I think,
that's interesting. That's interesting. I I've heard a lot of people that have said that it's a very difficult part to go through. But then again, as a leader, it's often interesting to me having people come to you and say, "Well, why are you doing this or why are you doing that?" And in my experience, leaders are continually educating themselves. They don't care what it's for. If it's going to help them in any way and what they're doing, they're going to go and take it. Obviously, that's the mindset that you have in looking at this and doing it. You're doing it for you and for your knowledge and understanding and to be able to bring something to the table. So,
and it reassures me that, yes, I understand what's out there. I didn't go for the modal specific, which I could have,
yeah.
but I went for the CSAPA, which is everything. And it's like taking that test, it's like, try to remember what some of this stuff is. So, to me, it was very interesting to do and very rewarding at the end of it. So,
That's awesome. Well, Dean, one of the things I like to ask is, you and I get together at the conference or we're just shooting the breeze. You come up to Denver or whatever the case may be, and we get together for lunch or dinner and we have a conversation. What is the one book that you would look at me and say, Chuck, you really need to look at this book. It will help you. It's going to bring something to the table for you. What would that book be?
well, as I mentioned, is I'm not a reader. So it's very hard to go ahead and pick something. But again, my thought is that there's many different ways that there's leadership. You learn leadership through different projects and that type of thing. you listen to different podcasts, and your language and leadership podcast. Anytime it pops up, I'll go and watch that. That's my break time, is to listen to that. And there's other places that we all grow our own leadership style.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, part of that is learning what everybody else does and kind of putting together what I think is best for me as a leader. The last one that I have on my desk is strengths-based leadership.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's how you evaluate what strengths you have and how you can move forward and how that could help in different leadership positions. It's a bunch of different people that talk about their leadership styles and stuff. And like I said, that intrigues me, is to see everybody else's so that I can do mine. One of the other organizations I belong to, they talk about servant leadership. And, that's a big thing. And I've read books on that as well, because again, I look at myself as a servant leader. I'm helping everybody out there. It's not for me, it's to help them.
Yeah, exactly. Very good book. I would recommend that book as well. Dean, I just want to take a moment. I need to acknowledge you in all the different things that you've done. You were one of the early instructors that I had going into this, and I kind of went into it with my eyes wide open, and was able to come to individuals like yourself and ask those questions. And I got to tell you, I know that you get a lot of questions. I know there's a lot of people that come to you with things, especially with LinkedIn and everything else. You're very visible there, but you've always taken the time to answer, and you never made me feel, or others that I've talked to, that we were a burden, or that it was just like, this is nonsensical. Why are you even bothering me with this? You've been very giving with your time and dedication in answering. And I've even known you to even follow up with a conversation like we've had before and say, you might want to look at this. I just came across this. So I got to thank you for that, because there's not a lot of people that would take on that leadership position of mentoring, obviously, in helping people within the industry. Um, you're very giving with your time. Like I said, we've seen you on town hall, and you're always been one of those individuals that we know that we can either call upon or ask if you can clarify something, or even when you've heard stuff, you've just come up and you said, hey, you guys might want to think about this. So thank you for that. I know that it's important. I know it's important to you. But like I've said many times before with a lot of the nominees on here, we just kind of take it it to granted that we're just, it's what we do. But yet, having people say thank you is a big thing. So I just wanted to take that moment to just say that to you. Thank you for all that you do and everything you continue to do within this industry. It's very evident that you're passionate and that you are very dedicated to this industry. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, I think a big thing there is just, I've grown up in the industry, and, I want to give back. And, like I said earlier, where would I be today if I had somebody that I could have gone and asked those questions?
Yeah.
As I say, no stupid question,
Yeah.
except for the one you don't ask. In
Yeah.
my classes, I always say that is, you see those people there and you can see their minds grinding away. I don't want to ask this, but I should.
Yeah.
And, it's like, there's no stupid question. And I'm always willing to help. And, that's, like I said, is for me, drug testing part of my life. It's, that's what I do.
Yeah. I was just kind of laughing because I remember being in one of your classes when we were out in Dallas, and you had given us a break and it was time for everybody to just go use the restroom and stuff like that. And you had a line of people right there waiting. And I'm thinking to myself, this poor guy's not even going to have a chance to pee before we have to start back up again. But you just took it in stride. I mean, it's just who you are. So it's awesome. Um, Dean, like I said, you've been very generous with your time. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us for consideration as the voters go to the uh, link and start voting for their nominees for these positions within the board?
Um, of course, I would like everybody to vote for me. But again, there's so many people that are knowledgeable and very good candidates. One of the big things is vote. Your voice matters.
Hmm.
And that really starts off the you getting involved. People will say, oh, somebody else will vote. Everybody does that for the presidential election. Doesn't really matter. It does matter.
Yeah.
Who's going to represent you? And in our industry, it's a small industry, but a very powerful industry. And so I think it's very important that you vote. Again, I bring years of experience, but still very open-minded in how to solve the problems that we have today to move forward.
Well, thank you, Dean. I appreciate it. And I look forward to having you back on the podcast, maybe even being part of a panel like we've talked about before. And I think you'd bring a lot to the table and be able to help a lot of the members in understanding and clarifying some things that are out there. So until we talk again, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Take care.